Hey everybody, and welcome to the ACE Football Academy. Coach Hamilton alongside Coach Dunham as always. Coach, got an episode tonight that we've been teasing kind of for a long time, but there's been a little bit of a process, and you're kind of my research guy, and you've done some research. You have got us all the tidbits that we need to know. I will say it's very clear by our jerseys, our allegiances. Don't hold that against Coach Dunham.
Do not hold it against me.
But, Coach, we have, when we go even just, the 2 years ago that we started this podcast, we always looked at things like, possession. And we looked at things like shots on goal and, just typical soccer stats that you saw on, when you're watching a soccer game, they put up the halftime stats. So you saw. And for a long time, it was the score and then the possession percentage. That was the two big items.
Shots on goal, things like that, the typical,
Clearly, the score hasn't changed. That's always the biggest statistic. But, Coach, you've done a lot of research into this topic for us, and we'll break down kind of what we're looking at now in today's game. But why don't you give us a little history lesson real quick?
Well, the thing that we're doing this is part of the podcast reasoning is to educate people. We had to educate ourselves a little bit.
We did.
On some of this stuff. We keep hearing about, we follow the Premier League a lot, and they keep talking about, well, they followed their analytics. They followed the data to pick up such and such player. And so there's way more going on in statistics and analytics that we're going to cover here. But we're going to get into really the foundation, I guess, of what we're looking at.
And even in moments when, and you talk about the EPL especially, go back watching Arsenal, and they weren't down a lot, but every now and then they'd be down 1-0 or 2-1 or something. And the announcer was just kind of like, everything's still going in Arsenal's favor, and you're like, no, we're losing. But then you look at that expected goal that we'll talk about in just a little bit, and you look at some of these new stats, and that's what people are going by now. And so it's probably time that you and I start diving into them too.
Yeah, so let's dig into things here a little bit. I'm going to be reading off my notes here, and I apologize I'm not looking at the screen to my audience here, but I want to make sure I get everything across. So years ago when, soccer kind of first started, late 1800s, when the clubs started getting built up, we know that all the evaluations were based on a coach watching a team play and making his own personal observations. Well, and his opinions on what he's seeing on the field. A lot of that has to deal with the scout or the coach individually, their own way of assessing a player and their knowledge and experience of a game. So you could have
their own biases and
5 coaches, and there could be 5 different opinions. Now, the range of opinions probably aren't that drastic,
right?
But we've talked about this before. You could have 5 coaches coaching the same team and have 5 different lineups, 5 different rosters. So it probably made the team building a little bit different back in those days because each coach is going to see things a little bit different. A scout is going to see things different, So that was late 19th century. Moving into the mid 20th century is when data really first started getting into statistics, and we started following games a little bit differently back then. You're looking at, they were tracking goals and assists, saves, just general data, mid 20th century. Everything changed when the Moneyball type of concept came along. There was a movie 20 so years ago called Moneyball following the Oakland Athletics, Major League Baseball. And this really had to do with statistical analysis, identifying undervalued players for specific reasons, to buy them at a low price, to give you medium to high production for 1 or 2 seasons. This is where statistics changed in really sports in general. Moving into the 2000s through the 2010s, time began tracking using video analysis GPS came around. They're watching player movements. You see the heat trackers on different statuses, success rates, tackle success rates, interceptions, and different concepts. We're starting to get into more details of individual game. And now we're looking into not just a team concept, but players.
Yeah.
Statistics are getting involved in the situation. That has evolved into predictive analytics. And that's where we're getting into the 2000 teens of analytics here, where now we're bringing in software. The Facebooks are here, and you hear all about their algorithms.
Well, the VOs and the Google traces and all those things.
Artificial intelligence based on algorithms. So now we're really getting into advanced statistics of monitoring games and different ways to, I guess, predict what either a player is going to develop into, or maybe what a team's success is going to be with certain players. So these software and the algorithms, they're simulating games. They're going to simulate 1,000 games and get different results that way. They're going to predict player performance. This kid's 16 years old at this level, this maturity. What's he going to be in 3 years of what we know now? Then they're identifying strategies off of statistics. I'm going up against the U.S. is playing Bolivia. They're using statistics to say, all right, they're weak at this. Maybe they're not good at being pressed at certain parts of the field. So let's use that in our statistics or in our tactics here. So that's kind of the history of where we are now. There have been numerous models that have been produced as far as your software and your algorithms, and each one has used either one possession a game, multiple possessions a game, watching each different teams. A lot of stuff has evolved in just the last 20 years, and really AI is really starting to kick things up a little bit for analytics.
Well, and there's so many words and phrases that you used in your little rundown there, which was excellent, by the way.
Thank you.
You talked about possession. You talked about, as you got later into where we almost are, the predictability, the simulation of games and movement and things like that. Even in the past, I don't know, Coach, 5 years or so, when you talk about like possession soccer, like you hear that term all the time. Hey, we want to be a possession soccer team. We want to control the ball and move the ball and things like that. And what you come to find out is that is not a great measure of what your team is doing on the field.
Well, absolutely. So let's say a game ended and your team lost 2-1. And you're looking at statistics and it says your team had 65% possession of the game. Well, you look at that and think, well, how did we lose that game? If you look back at the details of the game, well, that team was up 2-0 in the first half. So now they have no reason to press and press and press to try to score more goals. So now they're sitting back. That's why you've got that possession, because that team, they're just sitting back saying, "Go beat us." Yeah. And so that's the great thing about this advanced software and their algorithms, judging what the defense is doing compared to what your possession style is going on. I know, are you kicking the ball around the half of the field, just knocking from sideline to sideline, or are you penetrating the box over and over again? Very different style of play here can dictate possession value. And that's kind of a term we're going to talk about here in a minute here. Not just possession percentage, possession value. Are you efficient with your possession of the ball? Are you making penetrating passes? Are you breaking the lines? Or are you just knocking the ball sideline to sideline, just going nowhere? And so that's kind of where these algorithms are going into down the road here. What you're looking on that here, Coach?
And so I will lead you into what you're going to kind of start to break down for us next. I read an article on a website that I've mentioned on our podcast multiple times, that the girls soccer, my goodness, it has left my brain. but it is girls soccer is a .net or .org. It's something weird, and I will look that up when I let you start talking in a minute. But they it was after a game that I watched recently, and it was a Gotham game. That it was one of those games that, as a Gotham supporter, the game ended, and I thought, how in the world did Gotham lose that match, right?
Yeah.
And then so I see this article that says Gotham completely dominated in match versus whoever they played. And so I was like, that was just it. When I saw that article and then the way I felt after watching the game, and there were two different wavelengths. I was like, this is interesting. Pulled it up, and they start talking about, as I read this article, they start breaking down kind of what you're going to dive into, the expected goals, the expected goals against, things like that. And the more and more I read into it, the more and more I thought that makes so much more sense than looking and saying, well, Gotham had the ball for 70% of the match. How did we lose? And Gotham had, and Coach, I'm just as guilty as anybody is. That team took 2 shots on goal and they scored twice. We took 19 shots on goal and we didn't score at all and we lost 2-0. Well, there's a stat for that now, and it's going to show you that, hey, maybe you got a lot of shots, but they weren't necessarily quality shots.
Right.
And then the team that got the quality shots finished them, so you lost 2-0.
Absolutely. It's the puzzle of analytics.
Yeah.
It's figuring out what matters and what you want to pay attention to. And that could be figuring out your tactics for your next game or figuring out what your opponent's weaknesses are.
Right.
It's figuring out what analytics matter for your team. Yeah. And so people are hiring people all over the place now to work analytics. It's a huge front office system that's going on with pretty much every top-tier professional team these days. So let's dig in a little bit to the puzzle of soccer analytics. We just talked about, possession percentage and possession values. There was a passing percentage and a time of possession, but that's kind of a low-quality metric. It doesn't give you the details of, number one, what your team was doing, but also doesn't tell you what the defense was doing against you to either allow you that possession or maybe creating interceptions, whatever it may be. And so teams are trying to figure out how to analyze the quality of your pass. Was your pass dealing with a press? Was your pass breaking the lines of their defense? Was that defense in a low block? Were they sitting back so low that you had so much space to hold the possession for that amount of time? The location of the ball. Are you in the penalty box? Are you getting the ball through the seam, playing the ball off the end line? Completely different situation if you're just on top of the 18, knocking the ball side on the sideline, where you're not penetrating the box at all. Again, like we already said, defensive organization. Are they sitting back in a low block? Or are they putting up a press? Are they just compacting with the field and just funneling you out wide? Analytics are kind of observing that now.
So really, and before you dive into how we've progressed from that and what the analytics are now saying, really what they're saying is, how are you possessing the ball against the defense that you're playing? We've all played games where the defense is basically saying, hey, outside of the 18, you can have the ball all you want. But as soon as you get it inside the 18, we're going to clear it out, and then you're going to get the ball again. So, again, we're going to get into that quality, that deep down possession and possession value.
Yeah, so once they started realizing, okay, now that we know what's going on the defensive side and the offensive side, how does this matter to us? So breaking these down provided things such as expected goal values, which we're going to get more details of what that means here in the future. There's also a possession value. So the possession value is based on location, the location of the ball. The average probability of going on to score wherever the ball is. I'm playing my ball to my right wing. How often are we getting scoring opportunities?
Right.
If I'm playing the ball over the top, what's the probability of my center forward bringing that down and getting a quality shot on goal? So we're getting a possession value now of how efficient we are with that ball.
Which is important for a lot of data points as a coach. Like, okay, now I can see, right, how valuable is our possession, but also in those moments, where as a coach are my strengths? Like,
oh, absolutely.
Hey, if I can bounce this ball out to my left wing, then all of a sudden I know that my possession value when my left winger goes up 3 or 4 percentage points versus my right winger. And so now all of a sudden I'm seeing those analytics and I'm like, okay, now I can go to my center back and go, hey, if you got a choice, bump that ball to the left.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the great thing about this. When you're watching the game, your midfielder may be playing the ball to each wing. Maybe they're both putting great plays into the box, but your center forward is just shaking the ball left and right. And he's your go-to guy,
right.
So you get to see different styles of how things are getting broken down. There are other models that are being created here, not just the possession value model. Recent models have a goals added, which is a G+. There's an on-ball value, which is noted as OBV. And all these are based on multiple possession values using video analysis. These algorithms, they can track different players. They all have the bibs on, so we got the heat sequence on there. And using these freeze frames to check, all right, the ball is on the right side of the field. We're this successful during a game.
Yeah.
The ball is on the left side of the field. We're this successful at different points in the game. So it's really breaking down, areas of the field, different players, different strategies as we go along here. And, before we get into the analytics guide, kind of breaking down each one here, we kind of see how they're evaluating different players are going to purchase. When you're going to purchase a player for $100 million because he's going to bring up your expected goals valuation, that analytics better be spot on.
Yeah.
Because if you're down between, I've got 3 wingers that I'll keep my eye on here, and each one has its own pros and cons.
Yeah.
And I'm going with the guy that's giving me more goal chances off the end line rather than this guy giving me crosses. Well, I've got a guy that's better at playing it off the ground rather than out of the air.
Right.
Well, that matters to me now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the point, right? For a coach, the point is, how do these analytics fit my team? Mm-hmm. And again, we go back to that possession value.
Yeah.
Does possession not matter to me? Am I a team that I want to counter? I want to counter. That's all I want to do. We're going to play our mid block. And then when we win possession in those 30% moments, I win possession, then boom, I'm countering. Then I may not want a guy that has to get to the end line to create his assist. I may want a guy that can play that ball across from midfield, to the weak side and bang a goal that way. So I think what you just said is so important because it has changed the way coaches and evaluators have looked at the game of soccer, because it really now, I like it because you get to see what coaches really know what they're doing versus coaches that are relying on their talent to win games.
Well, now you've got the coach and the scouts and the eye test. What am I seeing when I'm watching video? And then I take my eye test analysis and I compare it to my, advanced software analysis.
Yeah.
What's matching up?
Yeah.
And what am I missing? That's the key part there.
Yeah.
What did I not see when I watched that video that analysts are telling me, wow, I didn't see that. But now that I brought that out, I see how it makes sense now.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I think we have to be careful because I think it also works both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe I look at the numbers and am I evaluating a game that Chris played a really good game against a lower quality opponent. Or am I, but I think I like about these numbers are averages over the course of a season.
Absolutely. Right. All right, Coach, let's get into our analytics guide here. What does all this even mean when it comes to each individual statistic? So expected goals. We've mentioned this quite a few times already. If you're looking at a stat sheet somewhere, it may be looked at as XG, lowercase x, uppercase G. This puts a number to the quality of a shot.
And this, I will mention this because after I read that article, I then sent you a screenshot of a MLS game that I was watching. This XG, this expected goals, has now become the number one stat. It used to be possession. It used to be possession percentage. The XG has become the number one stat below the score line.
So that's looking at distance to goal, angle to the goal. What's the scenario for the shot? Was it from across? Was it a set piece?
I think that's all.
Was it a through ball? So, again, the advanced software is calculating this stuff for you. So if the data says I have a 50% chance of scoring at the top of the box, as far as XG, that's listed as a 0.5. And so throughout the game, if I have 3 or 4 chances of this, let's say we're at 0.5, 0.2, well, my team could have a 1.2 expected goals for this game.
And still not scored.
But my opponent has a 2.2 expected goals per game.
And has scored.
And they just scored.
Yeah.
So now we're seeing not just how many times we can all say, well, last game they scored 4 goals. Well, that doesn't necessarily go into this. It's how efficient they are with the ball every possession.
That's the key word, efficient. Are they, and then efficient, like not only am I setting you up to score, but then you're putting it in the back of the net.
Right. And there's other things you've got expected goals for, expected goals against. Teams are looking at expected goal differential, and again, we're talking about efficiency here, not just your typical I've scored this many goals and I've prevented this many goals. It's expected. It's a data analysis of by the end of the season, we should be plus 20
right
on expected goals throughout the season.
Well, and it's just one of those things where even as an opposing coach, I'm like, all right, hey guys, I understand that they're 3-0, or they have 3 wins, they haven't been beaten yet, but their expected goals against is 3.5. That means that there's going to be opportunities for us to find the back of the net, and so we have to score. And those are how these metrics matter, especially in like prepping pregame and looking at things of that nature, because what it's like, especially at the youth level. Oh my gosh, coach, this team's number 1 in the division, and they beat us 2-0 last time. And then you're like, okay, yeah, but let's really look at it. So I think that these new metrics are such a better way to evaluate the game.
Yeah, so when we're looking at player expected goals, not just the team, this is telling me what's that player's ability to get shots from good locations.
I love this stat. I wish I had a way to.
Which means he's in the right position to get a quality shot on target. On target here.
I wish personally, and I know, again, this makes me a crazy person, and I get it, but I wish I had a way to track this at even my U13.
Well, yeah, let's say you got your center striker. Let's say he's in the right spot every time, but he keeps going just wide or just over. Well, we can work on the technical side of that.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's on their own, getting the right spots, is telling you down the road he's going to develop into a very successful player.
Or even that, and you and I have joked about, so we've laughed about this a lot, but even on that, I know we're getting ready to go long tonight, so I'll go quick, but even that right wing who gets down to the end line and puts the ball on the side of the net. Mm-hmm. And you just say all the time, please play that ball back to the middle. Just play it back across the middle. And then you can show them, hey, look, every time you put it into the side of the net, because what does everybody love? Everybody loves stats. Mm-hmm. Everybody loves stats. Yeah. So if I can look at Dunham and go, hey, look, you didn't put the ball into the side of the netting in the last 2 games, and your expected goal differential or your possession value or your pass value went from a 1 to a 2.4.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, I should not kick the ball on the side of the net anymore, right? I mean, I just think those stats are so valuable for the player themselves.
100%, Coach. So let's look into possession value. This is calculating the probability of a goal being scored at any point in a possession. How often is a team penetrating the penalty box compared to possessing the ball just in their attacking half? So it's really breaking down a value of their efficiency around the goal box. You've got accuracy and shooting percentage, percentage of shots are taken compared to how many often actually scoring. It's really broken down, and really you kind of almost have to go to school these days to understand what a lot of this really means.
Well, but just think about it, guys. How many times have we, even watching professionals, shoot, and you're like, there's no way that ball's going in. And it doesn't, and it goes wide or goes right at the keeper or, those types of things. And so I think, and how many times have you and I complained about quit kicking it right at the keeper. But that shot value percentage is, I think, really important.
All right, Coach, what's the future? We're in 2024. We've got advanced software. Algorithms is a big term these days. What's the future of analytics? The first thing is being economically available to amateurs and youth. Can you imagine being able to use this software with the U12 team?
No, but I think we're getting closer, like with the VOs and the trace and things like.
Absolutely.
I think we're getting closer. Although you have a VO like I have, it doesn't ever work. Shout out VO, but to be able to provide that to your team. Look, I coached the middle school girls for the first time in a long time last season, and I was lucky enough we played the first game, so we played at 5:30 before the boys, and so for a lot of my girls, they couldn't ride the bus home and get back to the field at the same time, so we would stay after school.
Right.
And I had wonderful parents who fed them, and then they would be done eating by 4:00, and we wouldn't play till 5:30, and I didn't want to take them out to the field. We all know how that goes as coaches, so we started watching film, and VO does really well to break down, like, hey, here's a goal, here's a goal kick, things like that. They don't break down the analytics that we talked about. I'm circling this back to your question. The progress we made just by being able to watch ourselves and then step immediately onto the field and do it was so incredible, and it was so good to watch the girls make that progress, and they did it on their own, and they would message me when they were supposed to be in social studies and say, hey, you haven't put the game film up yet, because they were watching it during school. But and I didn't support that, but it was so important to them to, hey, I want to watch it, I want to see. And so if you would give me a way to let them analyze themselves, how beneficial would that be?
And that's the key point there. It's not the coach critiquing them. Now their peers are critiquing them. Hey, Becky, 5 times in a row I play a ball at you wide and you gave the ball away.
Yeah.
Hey, let's get better this game on that.
Yeah.
Or, hey, instead of me looking for the long ball, come back to me.
Yeah.
Now I'm seeing what coach is talking about.
Or please play that drop.
Yeah.
And then I can bump it wide, and then we can go.
Yeah.
But I just think, and again, that is just the bare minimum of just me posting a VO clip,
right,
and then them watching it. And so, could you imagine if I was able, and what you were just alluding to, was able to trace them, and so then they could log in and go, hey, I was number 16.
Yeah.
And now I can watch number 16, and I can see how I played.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's going to be one of our future things here. The number 2 thing in the future is standardization. Right now, analytics is still bouncing around, producing a bunch of different models. So while the data continues to evolve, eventually you got to find some kind of standard form of data where everyone is tracking the same thing. And now we can share the same data where I can pull data from an Italian team and pull data from an England team. And now I can kind of base what they've got going and compare what we're doing here in America a little bit. The third thing is customization. This is going to be really cool here. It may freak a lot of people out here. But what if we no longer had to wear those sports bras? You see the men wearing them too, where it's tracking their GPS and their heat sink. What if that was a small device that's on your sock? Or maybe it's just on your shoelace. Or maybe it's just a little pin you clip into your shorts. So now you're comfortable.
Yeah.
No, it's not a device that you're wearing. It's just a little clip here. So the other thing that they're looking at is biometrics. This blows my mind here.
I think this is where they're going to be able to really make a jump.
Where they can measure and prevent maybe some heat exhaustion. We've seen cardiac arrests on the pro field every now and then, even in high school soccer. Christian Eriksen comes to mind. What if the trainers can get an alarm on their computer while they're watching the game saying, he's got some issues going on with him. I need you to stop the game or stop him out. Something's up. Yeah. The other thing is measuring physiological changes in the game. Are we getting upset at different times in the game? Are we getting down on ourselves in the game? Are we just getting way too hyped up? What physical changes in our bodies are happening throughout the game that we can start tracking now. And this is what blows my mind about where analytics is heading, where it's a little bit of a fear factor, but there's some pros and cons to all of this.
Now, I don't know, we could break them down, but I think the pros definitely outweigh the cons. I mean, you can get into that whole Big Brother talk and things like that, right? But I think the pros to that are the last thing you just mentioned. If I can figure out that Dunham's body temperature is not in a good place 10 minutes, 5 minutes before he can, then I may save his life.
Yeah. Think about all the football players we've heard in that extreme heat.
Yeah.
Passing out. Because, number one, they refuse to say something to their coach.
Right.
Well, now the trainer can be like, you need to get Hamilton over here right now to the trainer.
Yeah, well, and we talked about that in our things that the 5 things players do that make us upset. One was not telling us about injuries.
It's so dangerous. But we understand as former players.
I'm saying, no, can you
get it?
Get it. That's okay.
We're in a new world now.
Yeah. And so I think the future of these analytics, I think, is going to be really, really good, Coach. I think being able to, and we've already gotten to, there's a play metrics that is just a little clip to put on your cleat. And, the sock, the trace, you just put something in your sock. And so I think we're already progressing to that. And, I think the next step is to make those a little less expensive than what they are right now. I don't know how you do that because they are so beneficial, as we just outlined for you. But I think that would be the next step, is to make them not only keep them as beneficial, but also make them as cost effective for everybody.
I agree.
All right, Coach. Well, this was a really, really fun conversation. Again, it was a conversation that had been a long time coming. We went a little long tonight, but it was a good conversation. We hope you gained something from it. Again, as always, if you are interested in coming on and talking soccer with us, we would love to have you. I am Coach Hamilton alongside Coach Dunham. We are the Ace Football Academy. Go kick some ace.